Jersey. On the radio, 88.7 FM. Online, gobrave.org. A tune-in radio station. Part of the William Patterson Broadcast Network.
Broadcasting live from Hobart Hall in Wayne, New Jersey.
This is
The Innovative.
I think they're really unique.
The Fearless.
They have awesome variety.
The Kick-Ass.
I love Brave New Radio.
The Sensational.
I've never heard anything like it.
This is the one and only Brave New Radio.
The views and opinions expressed on this show are solely those of the host and guest, and are not necessarily supported by WPSC 88.7 FM, station management, or the station owner, William Patterson University. Anyone wanting to offer differing opinions may do so by calling the show at 973-720-2738. Abusive callers will be rejected. Now here's your program on WP 88.7 FM, Brave New Radio.
Well, good morning, good morning. Good morning to you. And as I always start off each Saturday morning, it's hard to believe that it's Saturday morning again because the time goes by so quickly. As I always share with you, this is a one time a week or a weekly show, yet it feels like I'm here 7 days of the week because that's how quickly time is going by. I seem like I was just sitting behind this microphone, and yet here we are again. If you're not sure of who you're listening to, this is your host, Marc Medley, and we come to you live each Saturday morning from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock a.m. with what's going on in the literary world, and all things are in place for this morning. My guest is on the line. All the systems are working, so we are ready to G-O, which is go. So we're going to do our usual ritual and routine, which is to give you the weather. And then I'm going to read from 2 books, and then I'm going to introduce my guest, and our interview will be underway. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let you know what's going on weather-wise here in the Wayne, New Jersey area. Right now, we've worked our way up to 49.7 degrees. It's going to be overcast today with a slight chance of a rain shower, high of around 69, low of 49. Tonight is going to remain cloudy, slight chance of a rain shower as well. Then tomorrow, Sunday, cloudy again, slight chance of rain, 10% chance of rain, that is. We're going to work our way to a high of 72 with a low of 51. Few clouds on Sunday night. Monday, partly cloudy skies in the morning will give way to cloudy skies during the afternoon. A stray shower or thunderstorm is possible. Monday night, rain showers early, mostly cloudy conditions later on in the evening. So a high of 76, low of 54. Tuesday, cloudy with occasional rain showers, thunder possible. 74 as a high, 54 as a low, rain showers in the evening, and then rounding out the forecast, Wednesday, mainly sunny, high of 86, low of 58, clearing up Wednesday night. Well, that is the weather brought to you right here from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center. We read, as I said, from 2 books. Kick the show off. Since it is a show about reading, we kick the show off with reading. So from the book, The Power of Being Thankful, 365 Devotions for Discovering the Strength of Gratitude by Joyce Myers. For May 21st, she says, recognize your enemy. Be vigilant and cautious at all times, for that enemy of yours, the devil, roams around like a lion, roaring in fierce hunger, seeking someone to seize upon and devour. 1 Peter 5:8. John 10:10 states that the thief comes only in order to steal and kill and destroy. The passage is referring to Satan and his system. Just as God has a system that he encourages us to live by, and he promises blessings if we do, Satan has a system and he wants us to live by it so he can steal our blessings. Satan shows us a circumstance and then makes us afraid it will never change. God wants us to believe his word is true even while we are still in the midst of the circumstance. That's why scripture says, yet amid all these things we are more than conquerors. Romans 8:37. In God's economy, we can believe before we see change or the good things we desire. Jesus gave us peace as our inheritance, but Satan does everything he can to rob us of it. Recognize your enemy and stand aggressively against him in the peace and power of God. Prayer of thanks. Father, though I have an enemy who is trying to rob me of my joy, thank you that I don't have to fear him. You have already defeated the enemy, and your spirit lives within me. I recognize I have an enemy, but I thank you for the victory is already mine through Christ. That's from the book, The Power of Being Thankful, 365 Devotions for Discovering the Strength of Gratitude. From Iyanla Vanzant's book, Until Today, for May the 21st. Iyanla says this: I am now receptive to the idea that what I did not do cannot stop me from doing something else. We already know who and what we are not. We talk about it every chance we get. We highlight it when people give us compliments. We point it out to ourselves to make sure we don't forget. We already know about all of the times we have been weak and indecisive, the times we have lacked clarity. We fret endlessly over our errors in judgment. We talk down to ourselves every chance we get, just in case we might begin to believe we are the somebody we have told ourselves we are not. We already know what we're not doing and why. We already know where we haven't been and why we cannot go there. We already know why we don't know and why we haven't learned it. We already know how we messed up and what happened because of it. We already know who we hurt and how we did it. We already know the chapter and verse of what is wrong with us. We know it so well that we have probably lost sight of all the things that are right. For some strange reason, it is not always easy to give yourself credit when and where it is due, to give yourself the benefit of the doubt, or to take your neck out of the noose so that you can move forward. In his book, Love Without Conditions, Paul Ferrini wrote, "If you do not take responsibility for bringing love to your own wounds, you will never move out of the vicious cycle of self-attack, self-defense, self-imposed guilt, and self-imposed blame. In other words, do your very best to see the right beneath your wrong. Until today, you may have been focused on all of the things you are not and the things you have not done. Just for today, offer yourself the love and acceptance you need to move yourself beyond who you have not been and what you did not do. Today, I'm devoted to bringing love to the places in me where I do not feel good about myself." That's for today, May the 21st, from Until Today by Iyanla Vanzant. I kick off the show reading from those two books because they send out a positive message, which sends out a positive vibe, which usually translates into a positive show. And that has been the history. That's why I've remained with opening with two positive readings, and it just filters and carries out through the rest of the morning. All right, it is now that time to introduce my guest. As I said, she is on the line, and she is none other than Kimberly Fain, MAJD, dubbed the contemporary voice of cultural and literary critique, continues to test the boundaries of what we consider politically correct. Fain's insight into cultural issues subverts the status quo, thinking in the terms of historical and contemporary subject matter. Over times, insisting that the truth makes society uncomfortable but stronger as a culture. Fain has taught at Texas Southern University and is currently an adjunct professor at Houston Community College. Due to Fain's background in literature and research as a legal intern for federal judges and a Texas state senator, Fain's publications specialized in the socio-political intersection of race, gender, and class in both classic literature and pop culture. Furthermore, Fain is a licensed attorney who was awarded 2 teaching and writing fellowships from the Houston Teachers Institute at the University of Houston's Honors College. That's 07 and 08. In 2012, Fain won the Rice University Center for the Study of Women, Gender and Sexuality Scholarly Award. During the same year, Buffalo Journal of Gender, Law, and Social Policy published her co-authored law article, quote, "Socioeconomic Status and Legal Factors Affecting African American Fathers," unquote, 2012. 1 year later, Fain received the Norman Mailer Semi-Finalist Award for her nonfiction personal narrative reinvention, and that was in 2013. Currently, she has 2 major book publications, Black Hollywood and Colson Whitehead, Rowan and Littlefield, 2015. Welcome to the Reading Circle. Microphones, Kimberly Fain. Kimberly, good morning.
Good morning, Mark.
How are things going?
Oh, they're going well.
Good. Are you calling out of Texas?
Yes, I am. Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas. Now, you're down there in the state where everything is big.
Oh, yes.
I know Texas relatively well because I spent some time down there in San Antonio in my Air Force days, and I have an aunt that lives down there in Missouri City, not too far from Houston.
Oh, wow.
And I also have a very close friend that I grew up with whenever I was in grammar school. Matter of fact, you may know each other because I think he's been on your city council, and I think he did some work at your schools you've been in as well. Do you know Carol Robinson or Carol Robinson?
Yes, my parents know him well. He's a professor at Texas Southern, and my mom is a professor there as well.
That's correct. Well, Carol and I were 4th and 5th graders together. We were in grammar school together.
Oh, that's cute.
So we know each other well. I know his parents, his brothers and his sisters, and like I said, we were best friends in like 4th grade, I believe, if I remember correctly. And that's been a long time ago. Wow. So you're about an hour. Let me see. It's 6:11 here, so it's about 5:11 there?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, my show is a live show early in the morning. I'm always appreciative of my guests from around the country who call, particularly those who are in different time zones. Because I know while I think I get up early, those of you in the different time zones, especially the ones behind us, are up earlier than me. I share all the time with the listening audience that a lot of my guests call out of California. So when it's 6 o'clock my time, it's 3 o'clock their time.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of times they say, well, you know what? I just didn't go to bed. I stayed up until the interview time. Then I went to bed. And some say, well, I took a nap and then got up and so forth. So I know you're Central Time. You're an hour behind me. So it's about 5:12 your time, somewhere around there. So, all right, this is what's going to happen. I'm getting ready to share some information with the listening audience. Listening audience, you know the drill. Get on all your social media sites and let someone know that Kimberly Fain is on the air with me, and we're going to be talking about her work. So let those know, get up early. Wake them up. I don't care. Text them. Do what you need to do. Tell them to get up and turn on their computers. Go to gobrave.org and the speakers, or if they're in the northern New Jersey area, they can catch us on FM radio, WP 88.7 FM.
In 50 feet, turn left. Why are you driving so slowly?
After a few drinks, I'm taking it slow.
Well, you're not fooling the cop behind you.
What?
Get ready to pay in 0.1 miles.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
We got adopted. Over the years, I came to know what really happened. She had us when she was 17. The way she saw things going, it wasn't a good environment to raise a kid. The fact that she did that just shows how strong of a woman my mother is, and I thank her each and every day for it. I wouldn't be the person who I am today, and I like the person I am today. I knew I was loved and I was part of a family, so that was what's important to me.
For more information, visit ichooseadoption.org.
I'm Christoph. And I'm Christopher. And our mom chose adoption.
You're listening to The Reading Circle with Marc Medley on Brave New Radio.
Yes, indeed. You are listening to The Reading Circle with your host, Marc Medley. We come to you live each Saturday morning, 6 o'clock a.m. Many of you know that the background music that I use during the show are my original compositions. That's me playing as well. And you know we lost Prince a few weeks ago, and I told you then that I was heavily influenced in some of my writing by Prince. And this particular song that's playing right now was influenced by Prince. The title is Ozma's Odyssey, but if you listen to it, you'll hear some Prince in there. All right, so without further ado, Kimberly, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning in terms of the writing or the interest in writing. When you were a child in elementary or grammar school or whatever they call it, was that a love or an interest of yours at that point, or did writing and reading and all of that come about later on in life?
Well, actually, I first started, my mom said, showing interest in writing probably when I was in first grade, and we lived in Philadelphia. So that first year, I guess to make a long story short, I just always kind of thought in stories, and I would like picture the whole story formed in my head before I really understood. And I kind of thought everyone thought that way. Everyone had stories in their head. And I told my mom that, and she's like, no, everyone doesn't have stories in their head. She's like, you're supposed to write that stuff down. So I would just write it down, but the thoughts would come faster than I could write all the information down. So I probably started writing as early as first grade.
That reason I asked that question, because this show, of course, is about reading, and generally listeners to the show either are avid readers or were avid readers or both, with the hopes that those who are not avid readers will become avid readers. That the whole impetus of the show when it began 15 years ago was to encourage reading. So I generally start in that question, and it varies in terms of the answers. For some people like you, they've been doing that since they were a child, like first, second, third grade. And then for others, they said, no, I really didn't pick up on it until my later years. I didn't start until I was in college, or I didn't start until I was in high school, or what have you. So I kind of asked that question to lead us into, like, where did this whole thing start? Because interestingly enough as well, I get many people who have written books who tell me they're not an author. And I always laugh at that response. Because it's like, if you have a book out, you're an author. And
right.
So that's why I always kind of lead in with that question. So as you started in first grade, did you kind of like continue on? And it's funny you said you thought everybody was this, because those of us who like to read and all that kind of stuff, we do think the rest of the world does that. I'm kind of like always thrown when I come across people who say, well, I hate to read. Like, what? Like,
right, exactly.
So you thought in stories as a child, and did that continue on, or did that kind of influence like your majors or what you decided to study as you went on?
Well, I continued to, as I said, I think in stories, and I just really loved television and movies. And even though my parents believed in being studious and focusing on my studies, that was the reward that I would get to, be involved in watching entertainment. And so I continued with that. And then when I got to college, the only time I really wrote was when I had an English paper, since I was an English major. And then I had an education minor, so I wrote a lot of papers then. And so it became basically a lot of essay writing. So I was still writing, but I took a little break from the stories then.
Well, if you were an English major, I know you were doing some writing as well as some reading. And I see here in your bio, and because we're going to work our way into that, matter of fact, I think I'm going to leap on over to that now. And it's interesting in terms of like how you say you test the boundaries of what we consider politically correct. Now, I'm one, particularly as I've gotten older. The older I've gotten, the less politically correct I've gotten. In other words, it's like, come on, like just tell it. Just what is the issue? Just let's get on with this and stop trying to sugarcoat it and fluff it up and this, that, and the other. Let's go ahead and get there. And now we have like our presidential candidates, and everybody's claiming they're not politically correct, so forth and so on. So talk a little bit about whenever you say you test the boundaries. Now, is that something you've always done, or is it in my case, the older I get, the less politically correct I get?
I think I've always tested the boundaries. I try to always be polite and be cordial, which I think is not part of the political discourse right now. People pretty much say whatever they want to say, and it's not informed. I think whenever you speak an opinion about a current issue or political issue, that you should have information, you should have correct facts.
Right.
And so I push it by telling the truth. And that, for some reason, for some people, that's more offensive than if you just kind of made up something, like what we're seeing now with our politicians. They just kind of make up something and throw it out there. Yeah, everyone's like, oh, he speaks the truth, when he's really speaking nonsense. So My push is that my testing of the boundaries is more of a truth-telling serum, and and can you handle it? Pretty much.
Well, you know what? I agree with you. You're right in terms of this whole notion of if you tell the truth that you got to be nasty with it, because I think a lot of people really do get confused whenever you say, well, I'm not necessarily focusing on being politically correct. A lot of people get that confused with being nasty. And it's not necessarily the case. It's just that we're calling it as it is. And like you said, you can back it up. It's not like, more so with Donald Trump than with Hillary or Bernie. I mean, I've never seen a campaign where it's so focused on calling somebody else a name. And so a lot of people think did you see the way John Kasich ate? I hate the way he eats. Or, he comes up with stupid stuff like that. And so people think, oh yeah, he's telling the truth. And I'm like, that's not necessarily true. One, it's an opinion. And secondly, it's nonsense that has nothing to do with the office that you're running for. Who cares if, how John Kasich eats, or I believe he called Elizabeth Warren the silly looking one or funny, whatever he said about her the other day. That's not necessarily not being political correct. That's just being rude and nasty and name calling. And people really do confuse the two.
Yeah, they do. They do. But I think we're dealing with a lot of low information voters. We're dealing with a lot of people that, as they admittedly have not participated in the political process, and now they've found someone entertaining, someone that they feel connected to because of his reality shows, and they feel Donald is one of them, even though Donald grew up rich and he claims to be a billionaire. Right. And he really doesn't have anything in common with the common men that he is leading, which is ironic about the whole thing. When people say that he pulled himself up from his bootstraps, really, I would love my dad to loan me $1 million.
I know that's right.
My business.
I know that's right. And so you're right. It is very ironic that you have folks. And that's the funny thing, because should he get in the seat, there are going to be a lot of disappointed folks, because that's whenever that disconnect is really going to come through. Because if you honestly think this man connects with somebody living in a trailer park in the back hills somewhere, right. Come on, let's get real. You want to talk politically correct? Don't talk getting real. If you honestly think that he's going to connect with somebody in Alabama in a trailer park somewhere, right. Come on. But I'm not necessarily here to talk about Trump, even though I could go all day about the nonsense there. I always tell people look at me like I'm with three heads. I said, there is a sick part of me that hopes he wins, just for a couple of reasons. One, so that he will see it's not what he think it is. And secondly, for the people that's out there yahooing and voting and carrying on, so they will see that he's not going to be able to do what he said he's going to do.
Definitely.
So there's a side of me that's like, you know what, just that sadistic side. I'd like to see this so that, a few things could be proved. But I'm leading up to, I noticed both of your books, we have the post-racial voice of contemporary literature, and we have Black Hollywood, from butlers to superheroes, the changing role of African-American men in the movies. Let's talk a little bit about matter of fact, I need to share some more information with the listening audience. When we come back, we're going to get into the books. How did you go down that thought path, or what drove or inspired you to write about these two topics? So, all right, listening audience, here we go. You know what to do. I'm going to do the same thing while I'm sharing this information. While the public service announcement is running, I'm going to go on my Hootsuite site and tell folks, tune in, because Kimberly's on the line with me, and I need you to do the same.
I love you.
To a child, it's just something else to play with. Lock it up, because 1.7 million children in the U.S. are living with unlocked and loaded guns. Get involved at ceasefireusa.org.
Green, green, green. Building your home, making a dream. Read on the zest and make it
means making sure the air in your dream home is healthy for your family to breathe. Building a radon-resistant home is easy. Just ask your builder or go to epa.gov/radon.
A message from the U.S. EPA.
You're listening to The Reading Circle with Marc Medley on Brave New Radio.
All right, we are going to resume. Kimberly, I stopped telling folks we were taking a break or going anywhere because we don't go anywhere. I don't go anywhere, and I'm not wanting the listening audience to go anywhere. So I moved away from saying we're going to take a break, we'll be right back, and all that kind of good radio talk to we're sharing information, and I need you to do this while we're sharing this information. So that way, you know, I want the listening audience to participate and to promote and to share the good things that we're talking about as well. So we're going to resume our interview. As I had to share that information with you, we call those public service announcements. They're not advertisements. They're service announcements. Hopefully you'll listen to the advice that's given in the service announcements, because you never know. It may save a life when we start talking about buzz driving and drunk driving and guns with kids and all that kind of good stuff. But going back to what I was saying prior to sharing that information, what led you to the path? Which I'm assuming Colson Whitehead was first. Let me see.
Actually, I was writing both of them at the same time.
The post-racial voice. Oh, you were writing both at the same time?
Yes, actually.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
well, what actually happened is I got the deal for Colson. While I was waiting for the deal for Colson, I got the deal for Black Hollywood, and I really only proposed to one publisher for Colson and one publisher for Black Hollywood. So I ended up getting both of them at the same time.
Okay.
And so in that process, so over a year, I wrote these two books.
Oh, and that's one of my questions I generally ask in terms of how long did it take? And that answer varies from 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year to 10 years. So you were simultaneously writing these, and what led you to write in this path?
Well, I have a profound interest in Black masculinity, and really just kind of examining it, because I think American society, kind of with Black males, it's on one level. Black males are deified when they're sports players, when they're superheroes in movies. But on the other end, if you are common everyday Black man, you're dealing with basically people having a really negative perception of you, and that a lot of times that comes from just the news or people's limited interactions with African American males. And so because I'm so fascinated by that concept, I wanted to take with Colson Whitehead, a literary giant, and how does he portray Black males in his writings, in his books, and then on the other end with Black Hollywood, how does Hollywood portray Black males, and how does that shape our culture? And then how do Black men on their end, how do they decide, I guess, when they're filmmakers in Black Hollywood and with Colson Whitehead, when they're writers, how do they take agency of their own image and reshape these views of how society sees them? Absolutely.
And I want to have some real, because you've given me an opportunity to say on the air what I've said in blogs and what I've shared with other folks, particularly on this subject of how African American males are depicted in Hollywood. And matter of fact, see, this is the thing, because I see you have Black Hollywood. This is what folks need to understand in terms of who runs things and the power and the messaging that you can send without even having to say. I mean, because folks will say, oh, no, that's whenever, and this is where I'm going, when Denzel and Haley won the Oscar, I had an absolute fit. I mean, it was like, because everybody got carried away. Oh, two African American, first time. And they didn't see the deeper embedded message that really went on there. And I'll get into that in a couple of minutes, because you hit on something here, because I'm going to stay with Colson Whitehead in a minute. It says, Kimberly Fain explores the work of this literary trailblazer, discussing how his novels reconstructed the American identity to be inclusive rather than exclusive, and thus broaden the scope of who is considered an American. Boy, I tell you, you got me going down some more roads here. We're going to have some ball this morning. Whitehead attempts this feat by including African Americans among the class of people who may achieve the American dream, assuming they are educated and economically mobile. While the conflicts faced by his characters are symptoms of the universal human condition, they assimilate at the expense of cultural alienation and emotional emptiness. Now, what came to mind as soon as I read that whole piece there about who's considered American, and again, I don't want to, this is not a Donald Trump interview, but at the same time, he says some really stupid stuff. So in terms of his campaign slogan is making America great again. And the question keeps coming. First off, when did America not be great? That's the first thing. Secondly, what do you mean by great again? Because there was a time when there were folks who were not considered Americans, even though they were in America. And some may argue that that still is prevalent today. So when you start talking here about Whitehead, as he's saying, all right, let's be inclusive, let's talk a little bit about that.
Oh, yes, most definitely. I think that, do you want me to go with the whole concept of making America great again, or just kind of interweave that with the idea of
interweave that? I mean, because it's like seems like your books are hitting on some of the very things that Donald, like I said, a lot of people don't, as we call it, read between the lines, or they don't get the subliminal messaging that's going on. And so you can weave it into what your work is about.
Well, to me, with Whitehead, you really see this idea of black males being educated, being professional, and defying society's idea of what a black male is, the kind of music that that black men listen to, the kind of work that they do. And at the same time, you have Whitehead kind of reshaping those ideas with his black male protagonists that he has in various books, Sag Harbor, to say one, and Apex Tides the Herd as well. You have this idea with Donald Trump talking about making America great again. And really, to me, that is referencing a time when certain groups, basically non-white, had less power.
Correct.
And you have Obama. He symbolizes progress. Even though blacks have not progressed to the level that they need to, he's still just sitting in the White House. He symbolizes black progress.
Correct.
That has made a lot of whites uncomfortable.
Correct. I could not agree with you more. Matter of fact, I had a theory. Now, like I said, people look at me sometimes and they say, oh, you think too deep or either. No, I think we need to think more. But my premise is the reason we had 17 candidates on that Republican side running was because they looked at Obama and said, if that African-American male can get in there, anybody can get in there. And that's why they all threw their hats into the ring. Because if he can do it and he can get in there, surely we ought to be able to get in there.
Mm-hmm. Even though many of them were unqualified in many ways or didn't have the correct temperament. I would say most of them on that side did not have the right temperament to lead the free world.
No, this is true.
Yeah. I mean, and Donald is definitely a classic case of having the wrong temperament. And like you said, the temper tantrums and basically the dozens that he continuously engages in. And basically, to me, when he says make America great again, it really is saying, okay, let's go back to white supremacy.
Absolutely.
Even though many would say, hey, we're still in that era, to many of his followers, they feel like they've lost power.
Right.
And so he's saying, hey, I'm going to take us back.
Right.
We're going to repeal some laws. We're going to ignore the advances in law, in social policy, go back to the 1950s, when, you reigned supreme and you felt good about yourself. Not just when you had power, but where you felt like, hey, I'm better than everyone else. Now,
see, you get it. Because that's exactly the subliminal or the subconscious message. That's the exact, and that's why it's resonating so well. And a lot of people don't get it. You don't see that, do you? No, they don't see it. But that's exactly what he's saying when he says, let's make America great again. Because as I said, one could question and say, well, what's to say America is still not great? Where did we lose our greatness per se? But what you just described, you hit the nail right on the head. And that's exactly what's really being said there. If between the lines, that's in the white space that you can't see. That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah, not the print, not the black letters to print, but that's in the white space that you can't see. See, so in your case, on your website, it's just the reverse, because I'm seeing you have white letters with the black background. But so on your website, that's the black area that we can't see. But in all seriousness, it is an issue in terms of exactly what you said. Even the fact that you have an African American that is the head of the free world is still the connotation and the denotations and the stereotypes, all that is still there. It has not changed a bit, even though some people really thought it was going to. It really did not. Matter of fact, it may have worsened. Because like I said, I truly believe the thinking is, oh, well, if he can do it, if he can get in there, no doubt in my mind. There was a couple of times Donald Trump referred to Mitt and Hillary, and the venom that he said concerning how they lost to Obama. He called them every kind of loser. How could they? There is no way in the world they should. I mean, what he really was saying, how could you two white people lose to that black man? Oh, well, McCain too, the three of them. I forgot about McCain. You had McCain, Mitt, and Hillary. And that he lumped them three in the loser bag, not so much because they lost, but because they lost to that black man. That's, in his mind, made the losing even all the worse.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, his own butler, or I don't know if it's his current butler or a former butler, was talking about Obama should be hanged.
Right.
I mean, that sounds like a lynching to me.
Oh, yeah.
And on what basis? Oh, because he's black, like it was done before. So it's like you have someone who is, basically, presumably not probably educated and resentful.
Right.
Of seeing a black man in power. So what do we do when we see a black man in power? Let's talk about death. Let's talk about causing him harm.
Absolutely. So as you were putting the book together, kind of like, what was your process? When did you do your writing in terms of, do you write early morning? Do you write in the evening? Where was your concepts and ideas coming from as you were putting this together?
Well, you have to get up early in the morning. I have to get my coffee.
Oh, I know that's right. I'm having mine right now as we speak.
and then the coffee opens my mind, and I like to watch a little news as well. Just because I was dealing with these socially and political issues, it was important to see where is the country at this time. So I love the history, and I love connecting history to present times. So when I was writing during this time, there was so much in the news with black males, unarmed black males, getting shot by the police.
Right.
And so this was constantly being played, and so I was constantly listening to how black people perceive themselves and how society perceives them, how police perceive them, so on and so forth. And so that kind of, on a conscious level and subconscious level, it helped direct what I needed to pick out in terms of the historical importance and relevance of the work. So I fused it together. And then when so you get your little news in the morning, and then after you get your news, I'm always researching at the same time I'm writing. Some people research first, stop researching, and then write. No, on the same day that I may be researching, I'm also going to write. And so the researching and the news helps, inspires me, motivates me, makes my writing purposeful. And then after I write a certain section, I actually like to edit on that day too. But the editing continues throughout the whole process, but I like to engage in all of that, the news, the researching, writing, and editing. And that's what I like to do on, one day. I know a lot of writers don't want to do all of that, but I think that writing is it's a collective event. And so that's how I, get my inspiration, and that's how I get the words down on the page.
In terms of the flip side, because I work with youth every day, because my day job, I laugh because, this is kind of like my weekend job, which really takes up my week by the time I do producing and scheduling and editing and yada, yada, yada. But my real day job is I'm a principal in a school, and in an urban school. Mm-hmm. And I can say, knowing what I know, knowing what you know, and trying to head some stuff off is a real challenge in terms of what you were just talking about, of how we perceive ourselves, so forth and so on. It is a real challenge, and every now and again, I can understand where our conservative and Republican brothers and sisters are coming from. So the message that we try to get across to the children is, first off, don't put yourself in a position that you would have to deal with the police. In terms of these unarmed shootings and being in a situation where you could possibly be, brutalized or abused by a police officer. Don't put yourself in that position, because I'm looking here where you have here in the Whitehead book in terms of being educated and mobile and so on. What happens if you're not educated? Because see, the education piece is where I'm trying to get the kids to go. And many of them are resisting that for whatever reason. Either it's not a high priority in the home, their parents weren't educated, so they don't have a high priority on education, or what have you. So what do you do if now, like in the Whitehead book, he's talking about those educated and mobile. But what if you're the uneducated and the stuck?
Actually, I taught middle school and high school as well, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think that what needs to be, encouraged with young black males, and not just young black males, but youth in general, of all colors, it's really the business piece. I think we've gotten away from the idea of black business. And I think many of them, because they don't know their options, part of that education is not just teaching them to be book smart, but let them know that they can take agency and control of their own destiny. They feel stuck because they're not seeing people do it. So how about taking them on site to these businesses, black businesses? How about having those people come and speak and talk about their humble beginnings, how they grew up in certain neighborhoods that had a lot of crime, danger, violence, how they saw friends go to jail, get killed. And still they chose a different path. How did they do it? They got themselves educated with the books, but also educated in business. So those things have to come together, and we've lost sight of that. We're just teaching people, you've got to go to school. And so then they're thinking, I've got to work for someone. I already come from a situation where people decide everything that I do. And so... Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right, because that's one of the options. Anytime I talk to the kids, I always give them, these are their options. You can either, because I'm not necessarily, even though, I have multiple degrees as you, I'm not necessarily convinced that we have to constantly push this, you got to go to college, you must go to college, it's mandatory you go to college. So I'll give college as one of the options, but there's also technical school. There's also, for those in that bent, the military. And then there is entrepreneurship. So it's like, all right, child, look, you need to get your basics here at this level so that you can do one of those. Either you can start your own business, or if you choose to work for somebody else, or if you want to go in the military, or if you want to do tech school, or if you want to do college. But you got to prepare yourself to do one of those. You cannot be sitting here not taking in what everybody's trying to teach you to wind up hanging on the corner.
Well, what's interesting is that the ones that I've found, the ones that you can really lose, a lot of times tend to be very smart. They don't realize that they're smart, so they need that validation. They also they have to have a lot of mentorship and support that comes from outside the home, because the images that they're seeing at home are reinforcing that, hey, it's just about survival instead of this is about thriving.
Correct.
And I found when I've talked to the ones who are definitely on the edge, the very at-risk youth, they are very enthralled by the idea of their own business, but no one's telling them that they can have it. You can have a barber shop. You have to start out as a barber and get trained, but you can have that. Wow, I can do that. You can have a mechanic shop one day. You first learn how to work in cars and work on cars well, and then it's like an apprenticeship process, and then you can go into business with someone else. And when I discuss these options with them, that the counselors oftentimes are not discussing, they're like, wow, I can do that. I can own myself. I can be in control of myself. And the idea of that, a lot of them do get motivated. The problem is when you teach them just for that year. You pass them on to the next teacher. And they may not hear those same things from the next teacher who is just drilling in that math or just drilling in that English. And then they have the potential to get lost again.
Now, just one of the reasons I do not develop a question sheet that I sit here and I read one question after the next is because there are things that are said throughout the responses that spark a whole different conversation. And you just did that. And I'm going to tie it back to something that you said in the beginning of the interview in terms of your fascination with males or the African-American male or what have you. Based on what you just said, and I'm going to share some more information with the listening audience, but I'll let you think about the question while I'm sharing that information. This is what tends to happen, too, in terms of African-American males. You'll get an African-American male that will say, all right, you know what, I'm not going to do the college thing. I'll be the barber, or I'll do the bricklayer or the plumber or this, that, and the other. Then you'll get a sister who's college educated that'll turn around and say, well, I got to have me a college man. You know, the barber is not good enough or the plumber is not good enough because I got all these degrees as a sister and I got to have somebody. I got these standards and yada, 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 yada. So I want you to think about that as I get ready to share that information, because I don't know if you find yourself in that predicament or not, having multiple degrees. But you do have sisters that will, like, I ain't having no blue collar brother after I done went to school, and the idea, not realizing that they may have missed out or maybe missing out on the best man. Let's put it that way. And I'm going to go ahead and share some information with that question, but I'll give you a chance to ponder that while I'm sharing this promo.
Hey, I'm Nick.
And I'm Alex. And I'm AJ's mother. AJ has a little bit of indigestion, so he can't be here right now. But we just wanted to tell you to tune in to the Underground Forum with Alex, Nick, and my sweetie pie AJ every Wednesday night from 9 to 11 on WPSC 88.7 FM, Brave New Radio, or you can even listen on the web now at gobrave.org.
My name is Diamonds. I am a radio DJ in North Jersey. I broadcast on the frequency of 88.7 FM. I will be on the air every Saturday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. when the sun is setting in the sky. If you are out there, if anyone is out there, I can provide music, I can provide entertainment. If there's anybody out there, anybody, please.
Club Melting Pot. Every Saturday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Only on WP 88.7 FM, Brave New Radio.
The Reading Circle on WP 88.7 FM.
Yes, indeed. And we are talking about books this morning, and we have a hot topic. It's one that's not new. Matter of fact, it's talked about on all or in all circles. Any of my radio host colleagues, because I listen to a lot of talk radio. That's what I do. I listen to a lot of the other hosts on different stations. And, you know, people ask me, my wife asks me, why are you listening to all of that all the time? Because first off, I love to hear what other folks are thinking. Secondly, I like to see the styles of the host. But this is a topic that will be around as long as there is time. And we're talking about race, and we're talking about African-American males. Throughout the book, Colson Whitehead, The Post-Racial Voice of Contemporary Literature, and Black Hollywood, From Butlers to Superheroes, The Changing Role of African-American Men in the Movies. Prior to us sharing that promo with you, I asked Kimberly, all right, brother decides I'm not going to college. I'm going to be a plumber. I'm going to be a bricklayer. I'm going to be a mason. I'm going to be a barber. I'm going to be something, run my own business, but not necessarily have college degrees. Then you come along with a sister that'll say, well, you know, I got to have a college man. I want the lawyer. I want the doctor. I want the this. Talk to me a little bit about that.
I'm really glad you asked that question. When I was working at a middle school, I kept having a series of failed relationships. And the women that I worked with said, you know what your problem is? You're only dating educated black men. And they said, you know, how about dating a man that, you know, is successful, but he is not doing the traditional, law school or the lawyer. And I said, okay, you know, so I opened myself up to the opportunities out there. And my husband, my current husband, he approached me at Starbucks because I was always at Starbucks writing. And he was in radio and television behind the scenes. And he only had 2 years of college, TSU. And so I ignored that, even though my father is very educated. And I said, I wish he had this certain, educational background. But I remember the women that I worked with at the time, they were in happy marriages. And some of them, their husbands made more than they did, even though they were the ones with masters. And so he and I dated for 3 months, and we got married. We're going on the 8th year.
All right now.
But what's interesting about that now is that he got his MBA. He got his master's in international management. Not only did he finish TSU undergrad, but within this time he's gotten his master's at Boston University in international management, and then now he's about to complete his MBA at University of Massachusetts Amherst campus. And so the idea there, and he's also teaching at 2 colleges as well. The idea there is that you have to look beyond, because he's helped me so much in my career. But I wouldn't have even known that if I wrote him off right away.
Absolutely.
In that first conversation that he only had 2 years of college and had left that. He had no intention of going back, and he went back by choice.
Right.
Because he said, "Wait a minute, we can do a lot together. Let's put this together. Let's put our talents together." And so definitely, to me, the wrong attitude for sisters to have is that I have this education, thus he should have that education. Just because a man is educated doesn't mean he's the best man.
Absolutely.
Out there.
And I have family members and other friends that I know that made that mistake and have paid dearly.
Oh, yes. And it's costly.
Yeah. When I say have paid dearly, I mean in every form. Had he or she stayed with the quote unquote blue collar person, I honestly do believe he or she would have been better off. And I think they know that as well. But I've seen them make that mistake in terms of the college, and it was not the best choice, not nowhere in close to the imagination. And but a lot of people get fooled by that. I mean, they get fooled. Education has various definitions. What is to say that you said he was in behind the scenes radio and television? That's an education. And if you're a barber, that's an education. If you're matter of fact, I saw something the other day that we're beginning to lose folks that are going into the masonry field, the fields of the technical schools. Like, cause I remember when I was in school, we had shops. Like if you did not want to go down the college path, you could go down the shop path. I'm going to be a mechanic. They've taken a lot of that out of the schools now. So a lot of schools are not allowing even that option. So, and I saw something that was posted on Facebook the other day. We need to get back to that. I'm going to shift gears. I'm going to shift gears a little bit in terms of Black Hollywood. I'm going to move away from the post-racial voice of contemporary literature and move on into Black Hollywood. And I said in the beginning, whenever I was introducing this, that years ago, back in the early 2000s or late 19, whenever it was, that Denzel and Halle Berry, both of them, same year, same award ceremony, each of them won the Oscar. And everybody had this is wonderful. Oh my God, 2 African American, first time in 70 years, and yada, 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 on and on and on and on and on. And I myself, I don't care about the awards one way or the other, so I can't even say I was angered. But at the same time, I looked at it for what it was and said, I'm not happy with that. I'm not thrilled with that. And people looked at me like, why? Denzel's black, she's black, you're black. Why aren't you happy? I said, because you don't really see what went on there. I said, I need you to look at this thing for what it really is. You want to talk about political correctness? I said, I need you to look at this thing. Look at the roles Denzel and Halle have played. Look at all the roles throughout their career that they've played. And look at the 2 roles that they won that award for. All right. Mm-hmm. Denzel won for Training Day and Halle won for Monsters Ball. Okay. Denzel, out of all the roles prior to that Training Day movie, and I saw it. I thought that was one of Denzel's worst roles, but he played in Glory, Malcolm X. He played a bunch of other movies that people really didn't know about. Well, he played the principal of a school, and I'm trying to think of the name of that. But it was. I know it was on video. I don't know if it made big movie or not. Very good role. He played soldiers. I'm trying to think it because I can't remember all his movie titles, but there were some really powerful roles that Denzel did not win for, that he should have. Okay.
Yep.
Then he now comes to Training Day, where he plays a rogue cop, where he plays a thug cop, where he plays a crooked cop. And that's what he wins the award for. Same thing with Haley. Haley played Losing Isaiah. She played Dorothy Dandridge. She played other extremely powerful roles that she did not win for. And now she strips butt naked in Monsters Ball with Bobby Joe or Billy Joe, whatever the heck his name is. And that's, yes, him. And that's what she wins the Oscar for. And people didn't see. I said, because see, again, they're not going to tell you, but the establishment who is in power still sent a message that, yes, we will recognize you, but we're going to recognize you for what we want to recognize you for. So therefore, we still see you as a rogue, so I'm going to recognize you for that. And I still see you as a whore, so I'm going to recognize you for that. That's why I was not thrilled.
Right. No, definitely. I mean, you have, I just noticed, and this is one of the things that I note in my book, when black males play parts like, with Denzel Washington and Malcolm X, and then you have, Mandela with Idris Elba, and then you have 12 Years a Slave, although nominated, those roles don't win because basically they subvert the notions of white supremacy. It shows black males being strong.
Correct.
And not being fearful, and basically taking on establishment. Then when you have, like you said, the roles that Denzel played and Haley played, they kind of reinforce this idea of black inferiority. The perception is black men are thugs, even when they are cops, even when they are, successful on the surface. Many people would say, hey, if you're a cop, you're successful. And it's like, hey, that part of you is going to come out no matter what. So not only am I going to put you in the role, but then I'm going to highlight that role because we want to reinforce that image in people's subconscious. And then you have with Haley, some of the scenes, sex scenes were off-putting that she has in that movie, and it doesn't show her in her most positive, beautiful light because that's kind of how society wants to see black, women.
Absolutely.
Just as oversexed and lowbrow. And that's the role she played, and that's what they rewarded her for. It's almost like, Haley, we want to remind you who you are, but we also want to remind black people, this is what we think of you, this is who you are. Don't forget it, because even at the highest levels, still, this is what's going to be rewarded.
Absolutely.
This that reinforced inferiority, black inferiority.
Absolutely. That's why I was not excited about that whatsoever. So now, forward fast the tape to this past year when Jada Pinkett and Will and all of them were proposing this boycott. And I had some thoughts on that as well in terms of, well, you know what? Truth be told, the boycotting should have started long before just this. And what I mean by that is because I took it a totally different way in terms of the boycotting should be because really when you talk political correctness, at the end of it all, the real true color that speaks the most is green.
Yes.
And so when you start talking boycotting, what the boycotting should have been, I'm not going to go watch those films. I'm not going to support and watch these films because if you do your research, African Americans spend more money on entertainment and movies and all that than any other group. So if we as a group pulled out and said, we're not going to the theaters, we're not going to watch those movies. At some point, those in Hollywood, in the establishment, would truly wake up and say, wait a minute, we're losing money here. We better change our game or our attitudes or our habits because now it's impacting our bottom line. So that's where the boycotting to me should have started. Just not watching the award, that don't mean anything. Oh, we're not going to watch the Oscars. So what?
Right. Right. Yeah, and exactly. I mean, that process has to go on, like you said, from the beginning. We saw the type of movies that were coming out. We saw the type of movies that critics were talking about and making predictions about, oh, yes, this film is Oscar-worthy and so on and so forth. And you could see the tide pulling that way. However, for Jada, when her husband was not nominated, then that's when she decided to highlight the issue, when really there is an issue.
Oh, yes, there is.
Yeah, I mean, this is just kind of systemic in Hollywood, and it shows that there's a bigger problem of us not being recognized. Like Spike Lee said, the real problem is that, there's no black can greenlight a film in Hollywood.
Right.
And people will say, oh, well, what about, Tyler Perry Productions? Yes, but he's based in Atlanta, right?
Right.
And then you have Oprah, and she's still not the head of a major studio. Yes, she has power. Yes, she produces. But still, when you're talking about mainstream Hollywood, we are not even working behind the scenes in power positions to make these things happen, to influence who plays the roles, to influence how these movies are written, who produces these films. And so we have to be behind the scenes. We can't just show up after the movie's been produced and put out there, distributed, and say, hey, there's a problem with this film. We have to get in there and say, hey, you're talking about us, you're showing us, and you're going to show us in a light that we think is a little more accurate and more that shows our multiplicity as human beings. We have to demand that from the beginning. And
absolutely.
If we don't get that, you start boycott, like you say, you start boycotting early because we kind of keep them in business with all our television watching, movie going.
That's my point. If the research, matter of fact, I went back because when I write my blog, I like to make sure it's research based and I'm not just talking off the cuff like Donald Trump. I go back and the numbers showed that as a group, we spend more on, and I live in an urban area in New Jersey, and Kimberly, I can ride down a street and see a house that is literally falling apart, that I'll have 15 dishes attached to it.
Yep.
It is absolutely amazing to me that you could be in a shack, yet the first priority is all those dishes hanging up on there on the house. It's not that much television in the world. It just is not.
Right.
But it's not that much. But for us, that entertainment piece is huge. And I'm not the only one who knows that. So therefore, as a group, we need to pull back. And if we were to pull back our entertainment dollars, that industry would take a hit.
Oh, yes.
And they would now wake up. Now, you were talking about Idris. I remember a few months back, they were considering Idris for the latest James Bond movie. It caused a big stink. Why couldn't Idris be James Bond?
Well, I think the writer of the books, I think he said that he was too. I think the word hood that he used, which I found fascinating because I said, wow, so this is a universal problem. That's why I have my chapter on the Black Brits, because even in Europe, they're facing this same concept, this same idea.
Right.
A black male reaches the highest heights, and somehow Idris Elba, who's very smooth, who's very charismatic.
Right.
He can play hoods, yes, but also he can play presidents. I mean, he is very diverse,
right?
And it was just almost like, no, that's a symbol of our country, and we just cannot have someone in a positive light, because Bond is perceived positive, and it's like they don't want to place a black male in that role to even be seen positive, by society. So I thought that was very interesting too, because it highlighted the racism that still goes on. In the industry.
Without a doubt, because Idris is smooth, and Idris could, because this is the thing. There's nothing that was, and again, if you start becoming intellectually or racially astute, there's nothing stopping you from progressing in terms of skin color, in terms of that role, because each one of the guys that have played it has not necessarily been milky white. So it's like, so there's no reason why you could not have a progression of skin color in terms of James Bond now becoming Idris, or Idris becoming James Bond. And again, since we spend the most dollars anyhow, we would have flocked to that. It would have been a blockbuster in terms of, because all of us would have been in there. And like I said, I'm not a big movie goer nor TV watcher. Every now and again, we'll go to a movie. I've begun to watch more news of late, because at one point I just stopped watching the news altogether because it was like the same old stuff over and over again. But I have begun watching the news again. But for the most part, I don't do a lot of TV. I really don't, because I think that's just a passive waste of brain cells. But again, as a group, because we do spend so much money, we should have some more say. And I mean, and we have some. We have like an Angela Bassett that said, no, I'm not stripping nude. And if that's what I got to do in the role, I'm not taking it. You have the Danny Glovers that'll do the same thing. You have the Morgan Freemans, but they had to get to that level. I mean, Denzel can do the same thing. No, I'm not doing that. But that's far and few in between.
Well, you have individual stances instead of a collective movement, you know, and that's what we have to work on. And you're starting to see that, you know, with Ryan Coogler and various directors that are coming out now. You're starting to see people, you know, Black people collectively working together and saying, hey, you know, I want a Black director on this and a Black writer, and the main characters, I want them to be African American. And so if you turn that individual stance into a collective energy, then you can start to, you know, shape and reshape the movies, and thus you'll, you know, change culture. But if you just have that one individual stance, it doesn't make impact. And then, like you said, on the other end, you have to have Blacks. We have, you know, this large purchasing power, and we have to insist along the way all year that movies reflect us more than what we're seeing right now. We're tired of the same old roles. We're tired of the same old stereotypes out there. This is trite. This is old. We're not going to see it. But as long as we continue to see those movies, Hollywood will continue to make them.
Correct. I'm going to take a short stop in terms of letting you know what's going on with the weather in the top of the hour. And then when we come back, we'll continue on the interview. And then I'll give Kimberly a chance to promote, and she'll be able to say anything except the costs or the prices of the books. But anything short of that, she'll be able to say. But let me go ahead and do what I need to do for the FCC and everybody else to make sure that we keep it legal. So let me do that right now.
WPSC, Wayne, New Jersey. On the radio, 88.7 FM. Online, GoBrave.org. A tune-in radio station. Part of the William Patterson Broadcast Network.
Broadcasting live from Hobart Hall in Wayne, New Jersey. This is the innovative.
I think they're really unique.
The fearless. They have awesome variety. The kick-ass. I love Brave New Radio. The sensational.
I've never heard anything like it.
This is the one and only Brave New Radio.
Straight from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center, here's your local forecast.
We have crept up to 53.9 degrees over the hour. We're working our way up to 68. It's cloudy with a slight chance of rain showers. Showers early tonight as well. And then tomorrow, Sunday, 72 as a high, 51 as a low, cloudy, slight chance of rain showers. And then on Monday, a mix of clouds and sun early, 77 as a high, 55 as a low, showers in the evening with some clearing overnight. Tuesday, considerable cloudiness with occasional rain showers, 75 as a high, 56 as a low, rain showers Tuesday night as well. And then on Wednesday, sunny skies, high of 87, 59 as a low. Wednesday night is mostly clear as well. Well, that is the weather brought to you right here from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center. All right, hopefully, and I truly hope you've been with us since the 6 o'clock hour. My guest is Kimberly Fain, and she is the author of Colson Whitehead, the post-racial voice of contemporary literature, as well as Black Hollywood, from butlers to superheroes, the changing role of African-American men in the movies. Now, Kimberly, and this is where I'm truly annoyed with Bill Cosby, but it is what it is. But this I will say. When the Cosby Show was on the air, it did push the stereotypes. And I'll tell you what I'm talking about, because if you remember in the show, Bill was a doctor and Claire was a lawyer. And of course you had the kids who went to school and did what kids do. But I had people, and I'm not making this up or exaggerating, I had people come to me and say, that's not reality. In other words, there's no way you could have an African-American doctor and an African-American lawyer married, living together in the same house, and their children go to school like every other child, so forth and so on. And at the time, ironically, one of the gentlemen in my fraternity ultimately wound up being the national president. It was just a reverse in his house. He was the lawyer and his wife was the doctor, and they had children. And so when the person said that to me, that's not reality, I said, hold up. I know for myself a family that's just like that. The only difference is, instead of the woman being the lawyer, the man was the lawyer. Instead of the man being the doctor, the woman was the doctor. So don't tell me, but honestly and truly, people did not see that as, oh, that can't be real. Now, they had no problem with Good Times. They had no problem with the Jeffersons. They had no problem with any of those shows that depicted us as being silly and poor. Had no problem with that. But now you have a show at that time that depicted us as extremely successful in two successful fields in terms of law and medicine, and that's not reality. So the roles have changed over time. I mean, it's like so many things have changed, but yet so many things have stayed the same in terms of we're pigeonholed. That's one of the things I do love about Denzel is he never did get pigeonholed into any role. I mean, Denzel could play a military officer or he could play Glory. Because even going back to what you said about the challenging of the power structure, in Glory, that's what he did. Whenever he was getting whipped and he didn't make any noise and just that one tear came down his cheek, he was defying authority at that point.
Oh, yes. Exactly. I'm refusing to beg
right.
in that scene. And I think that's really the scene that really made him shoot off to stardom, like you say. So it's interesting that you mentioned that because with me, my mom's an attorney, a law professor as well, and my father's a public administrator. And I was going to private school during that time with Cosby. And so when people would say it wasn't realistic, it wasn't even just my home. There were a lot of different homes that I could think of with two-parent households that was black. And I just kind of listened to that. I would hear that, and I didn't say much because although I was outspoken, I was more outspoken in the classroom, not so much outspoken in society.
Right.
You know, because I was always respectful of my role of being their child. And a lot of the people in the city, you know, knew them oftentimes, and so I was very conscious of what I said out into the public. But yet, you know, with Cosby, he did show us that, and that's why it's so disappointing to find out maybe there's some things that were going on, you know, in his personal life that totally contradicted the image that we were seeing on television.
Absolutely.
So,
that is absolutely where the disappointment comes in from, because he actually did highlight and promote that, yes, this is possible, and not only is it possible, but it is reality. That there are families that are like this. Matter of fact, probably more than one would believe based on how we're promoted or the perception of. Because, see, again, that's not the perception that the powers that be, if you will, want out there.
Okay.
Because, I mean, even like, okay, because out of Obama is what he is, one way or the other. But through the 7 or 8 years that he's been in office, you have not heard him anything about him cheating. And they've tried. They've tried. You haven't heard anything that was like really out of bounds there. I mean, everything really was is whether he and Michelle get along or not, but everything was still about them as a family. And that's how you've always seen them, with the girls, with him. You never heard of any scandals. You never heard of any of that kind of stuff. It was always, they were always very much together. And they've tried to pull that up. I mean, I've heard all kinds of stupid stories that Obama is gay and Michelle is a tranny, and Obama wanted the queen and wanted the this, that, and the other, whatever the woman was from Europe that was sitting together at one of the, all kinds of stupid stuff they've come up with. I mean, it just, they've tried. It's just like, they cannot accept that. Back to the thing about African Americans or black people or any culture for that matter that's in here is just as American as anybody else. People are people are people. That's the part I don't get. People are people. You have good eggs and bad eggs in every group, just like you have good eggs and bad eggs in every profession. I'm not necessarily one that always jump on the police brutality bandwagon. I don't, because there are some things that cause something. And then at the same time, you do have some bad cops. You do. Just like you have bad teachers, or you have bad lawyers, or you have bad bakers, or you have bad candlestick makers, what have you. It's just the nature of the beast. But when you can shape perception, and that's what Hollywood does. Hollywood shapes perception.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something earlier about the kids in terms of what they see at home. Well, the kids see it at home, and they also see it on the television. So they really don't. Well, what else am I to model other than what I've seen?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, I've had times when just teaching, just people, even though I had more credentials than maybe, my coworkers, just the perception oftentimes from blacks that, well, you still, even though you have more degrees, you still might not be as qualified to teach me this material, or what you're saying might not be true, because in people's mind, they kind of feel almost like it's not true, it's not valid until someone white says it.
Right.
And I see this in education. I see this all the time. And unfortunately, what happens is that sometimes it's hard to progress someone forward when they have this negative perception of themselves and of black people, of black authority, I guess you could say.
Oh, absolutely.
And all kinds of blends together, really.
No, absolutely. Keep going.
Oh, no, it's just that, that's what's so dangerous about these images that are on television, that are in movies, because, you have people watching these things, and they are going into voting booths and voting on policy based on the perceived threat of blackness.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's dangerous for us, because it's not just whites that are thinking these things. We're having blacks who are thinking this about themselves. And that is why it's so important that we fight these images. And there's more than one way to fight. You don't have to fight necessarily by protesting. Right. You can fight just by creating, being inventive, working together, helping each other out, and showing a different view or a different way of looking at things. My way of fighting was to write.
Right.
I'm a behind-the-scenes person. I'm not a protester.
Right.
But I am a truth teller. I'm a storyteller. And so I'm going to put it into words, and I'm going to put that research right there for you so that you can argue your points, where you have a place to start from, and then do more research, and you can fight those battles in your way. Information, I guess you could say, that is my way of fighting these views.
Right.
No,
absolutely. It's like any school building I've ever led or taught in literally eradicated the word nigger. Because the kids come, yo, my nigga, what's up? Oh, that's my nigga over there. Yo, man, that nigga. Oh, that's all I could hear. Well, yo, man, did you see that nigga, man? That nigga. Oh, that nigga. Oh, that's my nigga. Yo, what's up, my nigga? In any building that I've been, we've eradicated that, because one, we would do the history of the word. I was just like, I don't care how you spell it. Nigga, Niggah, Nigger, Nig. I don't know how you spell it. It's not cute. And once we started getting into the history of it, and then once we constantly reinforced, because anytime if they were in my presence and I heard them saying, I'd do a big loud who, and I'm sorry, Mr. Medley, but it got into the point wherein I don't hear it. When I walk through the hallways of my building, when I hear the kids conversating and talking and playing with each other, I don't hear it. And because we literally had to do the information and the education thing. And the other day I walked into a classroom. It was the anniversary date of Brown versus Board of Education. And the teacher was showing the video on that, and they were hearing the verbiage. They were hearing in the protests of the folks that were saying, we don't want no niggas in our school, and so on and so on. And I stopped the video right there, and I said, stop. I said, did you hear what was being said? And I said, and when those words were being said at that point, that wasn't about cuteness. That wasn't about fashion. That wasn't about style. What that was saying was you were less than a human being.
Exactly.
And so we got into that whole, and the kids really began, they had the opportunity to embrace, this is why we don't, because again, it is very confusing for people. That's why for that, and I didn't see that thing that Obama does, the writers thing, that whatever that last the comedy thing was. But it's my understanding, one of the guys got up there talking about, you did it, my nigga, or whatever he said. I said, see, we can't have that. We cannot, because that is confusing. Because on the one hand, you got folks saying, I don't want to be colored, or if the wrong color calls me that, then I want to deal with you. But yet, if your own color call with that, oh, that's cute. And you can't have that.
Right.
You can't have so.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
But so the kids have gotten, but the only way, like you just said, there's more than one way to change the game. It doesn't always have to be out there with the signs, but that's an important piece too. But there's the education piece, there's the information piece, talking to people, letting folks feel. That's why I have a problem with the rappers. I really do. The rappers need to wake up. And I'm a musician as well, so I get that. But there are ways you could still rap to a beat without every other word being nigga. Now, that's just all to it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and you can go through the whole rap song without that. Especially when, you've made it. Okay, so you had certain songs to get people to know you and say your name. And then after a certain point, you can deviate from that. You're supposed to grow, not just as a person, but as an artist. And it's interesting what you say about the word, because I have taught my students that, hey, it represents not only second-class citizenship, but it actually signifies lynching, really, because oftentimes, lynching didn't happen without that word being associated with it. And I tell them also, it's, to me, synonymous with slavery as well, because, names were not used. It would be, hey, get this, hey, and get this, so on and so forth. And so I told them, I said, when you say that word, you're making a conscious choice to invoke that negative, dehumanizing history.
Yes.
I said, do you want to act like an educated person? And again, like you said, education doesn't necessarily mean formal education. But do you want to act like an educated person, or do you want to stay in the gutter? Do you want to sound like you're in the gutter? I said, do you think that I walk around on the job speaking like that? I said, talking to people like that? I said, how would you like it if someone had a name for you?
Right.
And they're always like, no, I don't want that. Use my name. I said, okay, well, that's what you're doing. And so I noticed, people, students changing the way they talk about it. And when I'm teaching on whatever level it is, I tell them, I said, if it's in the literature, I said, and we read it, then we're going to discuss it. I said, but other than that, if it doesn't pertain to any story that we are reading, I'm not going to listen to or hear you use that word.
Right.
Anyone of any color for any reason, because it doesn't pertain to anything.
Right.
We all have names here, so use them.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's like I hear my Spanish brothers and sisters talking about that nigga. Yo, man, you should have seen that nigga. Yo, I mean, I did a blog post a couple of years ago, and the title of it is "Who is quote that nigga unquote." Because when you hear them walking in conversation, it's all, yo, man, you should have seen that nigga. Yo, man, that nigga was something else. Yo, who is that nigga? That's what I wanted to know. That's what I told. That was the title of the blog post, because I've always heard that nigga referred to. So I wanted to know who that is. But in any event, I'm the same way. Like, yo, you said it perfectly when you say you're invoking that negativity. And that's the thing. They don't even realize. And then you wonder why you're always kept down. Because as you heard me in the beginning of the show when I always say I read because it creates a positive vibe for the rest of the morning. It's the same thing with the words that we choose. So if you're constantly, if the only thing you keep hearing is somebody calling you nigga or you calling somebody else nigga, that's as far as you rise. And drawing it back to your Hollywood, when you're constantly going to watch movies or you're listening to rap or you're watching TV shows, that's all they refer to themselves as. Mm-hmm. I take issue with that. And so the fact that you're talking about roles changing, I applaud you, and giving the history of kind of like where we've come from, because I see Sidney Poitier, and who's that on the left? I see.
You have Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte. I have them in a chapter together. Paul Robeson, Stephen Fetchit, Bojangles. Then I work it up to the blaxploitation era. So you have Ron O'Neal, Julian. And then we head on to the 1980s, with Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, and we can't forget our gangster rappers who become actors, Ice Cube, Tupac.
Right.
And so I take it on from there, and then of course you have to cover Tyler Perry and Spike Lee and Will Smith, of course, as well. But since Oscar Micheaux, and that's who I start with, since the beginning, we have definitely been trying to fight this. It's just that we have high points and we have low points in this fight to reclaim black masculinity, basically, and the black image in general.
All right. Well, I told you I would give you the opportunity to promote. That time has come. You can talk about any book signings, anywhere you're going to be, how they can get Black Hollywood or either Colson Whitehead, websites, anything you want with the exception of $1 amount. You are free to do that. Any shout outs you want to do, anything along those lines, the mic is yours.
Okay, well, definitely you should buy Black Hollywood, and you can get that from ABC Clio, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. But it's basically a 100-year progression of Black men in film and how they take agency to advance their political and social agendas, and basically transforming the image of Black males and Black society in general. And it's really important right now for us to see this idea of Black males being successful. You have with Captain America, Civil War, you have Anthony Mackie and Mr. Boswick as well, playing Black Panther. And so we're starting to see, we've gone from that point, and I talk about that, of playing slaves and butlers to playing president, God, and superheroes, just kind of reimagining the possibilities of Black masculinity. And then with Colson Whitehead, you can buy that at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, at Rowman and Littlefield. And Colson Whitehead is basically the literary giant. He is the Ralph Ellison of our time, and he definitely is talking about Black masculinity in a profound way. Excuse me. And right now he has a book, Underground Railroad, that's coming out, and I'll be reviewing that for National Book Review. And that will come out on the same day as its publication. And the book is Underground Railroad. And so, ironically, he really does best sometimes with his female protagonists. Like with Intuitionist, he had a female protagonist. And with Underground Railroad, he has a female protagonist, Cora. And so I'm interested to see what he's going to do because, in my book I had some suggestions, even though I am a fan of Colson. And so I think both books work in concert together, basically reflecting our history and showing where we've been and showing where we're going. And this idea of us, basically, if we want to change things, we have to get in there and do it. If you want to change what we see, we definitely have to get in there from the base floor of writing it, of directing it. And if we get in there, don't wait for somebody to change our destiny. We have to take ownership. We have to take agency of ourselves, reclaim the perception of who we are. And
absolutely.
If we do that, but we also have to help each other. We can't go it alone. If we do that along the way, not once I get there, I'll pull people up. No, as we're journeying together, let's collaborate. Let's make this a collective effort. And I want to emphasize too, someone asked me this, are you saying that, blacks should only work with blacks? Of course not. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. This is America. That's the whole point. It's that we want to be included. And when we write these things, excuse me, whites and Hispanics and Asians are welcome to be a part of that process, and we want them to be a part of that process. But we still have to write things that reflect who we are. And I think that's what Colson Whitehead does, as well as the filmmakers that I talk about and many of the filmmakers that are coming up now. They are saying, hey, black people are a big part of this culture. We represent, a good percentage of the population. So let's write things that show you who we are. And yes, non-blacks can be part of the process, but we are going to change the way society looks at us. So that's what I try to do with Black Hollywood and Colson Whitehead.
All right. Well, I thank you for rising early with me out of Houston, Texas, because it's 7:27 here, which is 6:27 there. But it was well worth the conversation. I enjoyed it. I truly was inspired by it. You gave me an opportunity to say some things that I've written in terms of my blogs and in terms of my own podcast. I got a chance to say them on the air. And again, a part of that whole process that Kimberly was just talking about is we have to wake up. We can't just every time sometimes we win an award, be happy and clapping and carrying on. Yeah, it's nice for them to a degree, but you really have to look at the bigger picture. And part of that is exactly what Kimberly just said. A part of us realizing of the game needing to be changed is us waking up and looking at the larger picture. And what I'm talking about is going back to the Denzel Haley example. Yes, that's nice they won an award, but look at the larger picture of what they won that award for and what really the message was being sent. And I said it earlier, and I'm going to continue to say it. The message was being sent that we will reward and recognize you for being what we feel you are, not for what you really are. So once we begin to wake up and start seeing things like that and then start taking action, that's when progress will be made.
Exactly. Because we can change who we are quicker than we can convince them.
Correct.
Of what we are.
And as long as we accept the perception that is put upon us, as long as we will have it.